Bom dia, bem-vindos ao Encontro Ciência 2022. Construir o futuro com ciência é o tema da edição deste ano, de uma iniciativa que, mesmo em tempos difíceis e inéditos, manteve o compromisso com a ciência e com quem faz ciência. Agora, e após 2 anos de pandemia, o Encontro Ciência regressa ao seu formato original. A edição deste ano centrar-se-á nas 5 missões do Horizonte Europa, o Programa de Financiamento Europeu de Investigação e Inovação. Um debate sobre o futuro da ciência que conta com a participação de investigadores e decisores políticos do país convidado, o Egito, that I would like to welcome to Portugal. Para dar início à sessão, chamo ao palco as comissárias do Ciência 2022, Teresa Pinto Correia, do Laboratório Associado Change e da Universidade de Évora, e Teresa Ferreira, do Laboratório Associado Terra e do Instituto Superior de Agronomia.
Good morning and welcome to the annual science meeting of Portuguese researchers. This is the forum where we debate novel ideas and celebrate achievements each year. The event is organized by the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology, and this year, this is a very special year because the Science Foundation commemorates 25 years of existence and research promotion in Portugal. A quarter of a century where Portuguese science flourished and expanded, and has done so as never before in number of researchers, in researcher activities, in research centers. We have recently attained an investment in science of 3,000 million euros, representing more than 1.6% of our GDP, a growth over 30% in the last 5 years. And the number of persons involved in research in Portugal are now reaching 12 per 1,000 inhabitants, again an increase of more than 30% in the last years. We were classified as a highly innovative country in the European Innovation Scoreboard, the 12th in the rank of European countries. We are now fully linked to our European research partners and to all researchers in the world. And we can see this network of Portuguese research and innovation and achievements spreading and influencing everywhere. We can see it in the indicators of quality innovation. We can see it everywhere. Science is universal and stands above conflicts, helping humanity on a daily basis, even if sometimes we don't notice it. And even when the problems that were created by the use of the same scientific tools and developments were the beginning of this solving of problems. We use our Portuguese annual meeting also to debate common goals, common problems, common needs. We aim for a country with an economy and a society that should be more ecological, more sustainable, more digital, more resilient. Once again, we are gathered here to learn and to discuss, trusting on our motto for this year's meeting, building the future with science.
Good morning, everyone, also from my side, and welcome to this Science 2022 meeting or conference. The theme of this meeting, as you all know, is building the future with science. And we all know we need to look ahead into the future without missing the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, the focus on these goals. Increased extreme weather events due to climate change, the world level COVID crisis, political instability in different regions of the world, and now the war in Ukraine. They all showed the urgent need to progress in another direction. Governments and international organizations, as well as society, have recognized the potential of science, technology, and innovation to enable and accelerate the transition towards these goals. So science is part of the equation. In this way, the spirit of this 2022 Science Conference is the spirit of the EU missions of Horizon Europe, engage in mission-oriented research and innovation to drive investment-led growth across the regions, bringing citizens closer to policy making, and invest in those areas that matter to society, to citizens. So science that helps building the future, as we are discussing here, aims for strong visibility and impact. We have to focus on impact much more than on process. Achieve bold, inspirational, and measurable goals within a set time frame. Find solutions to some of the major challenges felt by citizens, and spark innovation across disciplines, across sectors, and across actors. So, the Science 2022 program is organized around the 5 missions of Horizon Europe because they are subjects which matter to the worldwide society and worldwide science. Climate, how to decarbonize, mitigate, and adapt. Soils, how to restore and enhance the provision of ecosystem services. Cities, how to get more green, sustainable, and cohesion-led cities. Oceans, how to restore oceans and seas. And cancer, what are the advances and challenges we are facing? These are the plenary sessions. Then we have thematic sessions which are cross-subjects which have to do with society, science and society, science impact, science and society, science structure and organization, innovation, digitalization, quality in education and training, space and satellite data, and many others. These are the thematic sessions. And then multiple parallel sessions, which deal with the best research done in Portuguese research institutes, linking from different disciplines, but also linking disciplines to enterprises, to society, in co-construction processes, which we are getting better in doing, and which we'll still need to learn a lot in how to do. Our invited country is Egypt. We are very happy from our position in the southern extreme of the European Union to welcome this country as an invited country, with an environmental and cultural context which is to a very large extent Mediterranean. This close collaboration is key also in science. So if innovation challenges deriving from the transition need of the Sustainable Development Goals are the same all around the Mediterranean basin, and we are very happy with the engagement of Egypt in taking part in this conference. We look forward to the extended collaboration with you and the outcome of these days' exchanges. Thank you very much.
Passo a palavra à Presidente da Fundação para a Ciência e a Tecnologia, Helena Pereira.
Bom dia a todas, a todos os que estão aqui e os que nos estão a seguir à distância. É um prazer estar aqui neste Ciência 2022, nesta festa dos cientistas portugueses. Good morning to our invited guests this year from the Arab Republic of Egypt. I'm very honored, we are very honored that you'd accept to come and bring such an illustrious and big delegation. So we are looking forward for all our exchanges and future cooperation between our two countries and our two scientific communities. Neste Ciência, vamos fazer aquilo que nos habituámos já a fazer ao longo destes anos. Vamos encontrar-nos, vamos discutir temas do nosso interesse científico em Portugal, mas de interesse global, pois a ciência não tem, como sabemos, fronteiras. É sempre um intercâmbio muito frutuoso nestes 3 dias de ciência, encontrarmos pessoas, cientistas, de todas as áreas científicas, de todas as instituições que aqui convivem, que aqui discutem e que trocam ideias sobre o futuro da ciência em Portugal, sobre a construção da ciência em Portugal no futuro. A FCT, e falarei das comemorações, muito obrigada pelas palavras que dirigiram à celebração dos 25 anos da FCT, falarei brevemente um pouco mais disso na minha apresentação a seguir, mas gostava de Tenho um slide. Desculpem. A FCT festeja este Ciência 2022 também com a abertura do novo site da FCT. Este é um anseio da nossa comunidade científica de há muitos, muitos anos. A FCT tem trabalhado também há vários anos na construção de um novo site e lançamos hoje, é esta a página do novo site, que é o beta.fct.pt, e é o beta porque estamos em simultâneo, como deve ser, com as duas versões do site da FCT. Portanto, a nova e aquela que todos nós conhecemos e que está recheada de informações sobre as nossas instituições, sobre os nossos investigadores, sobre as nossas ações. Nesta versão beta, que fizemos questão de lançar hoje, mostramos e que estamos a carregar com a informação adequada, ela está, no entanto, também aberta a sugestões de toda a comunidade. Por favor, usem, não se admirem se em alguma informação forem remetidos para o site clássico, mas todas as ideias e todas as sugestões que tiverem, por favor, digam-nos. O site da FCT, a página da FCT, quer-se mais moderna, mais dinâmica, obviamente com toda a informação que é necessária para a nossa comunidade e guardando também o histórico da informação. Esta é uma componente também importante, mas de certo modo, é uma página da nossa comunidade científica. Portanto, é para a comunidade científica que a fizemos e é com ela, com a sua participação, que a queremos ir construindo. Desejo que estes 3 dias do Ciência 2022 sejam interessantes, serão de certeza, e que todos saiamos daqui com um sorriso nos lábios e a pensar, bom, daqui a um ano teremos o Ciência 2023. It is now my deeply pleasure to call to this floor the Minister Khaled El Ghaffar, the Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt, of Higher Education and Scientific Research. He honored us to being with us, and I call him, please, to this floor to give his inaugural address to this conference. Thank you so much, and welcome to Portugal and to Ciência 2022.
Thank you very much and good morning. I'm excited to be here with my delegation and we are very happy for the kind invitation. Honorable Minister Oliveira Fontunato, Minister of Science, Technology and Higher Education, Helena Pereira, President of the Foundation for Science and Technology, Teresa Ferreira and Teresa Pianto, Commissioners of the 2022 Science Meeting. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today in this important annual meeting of Science, Technology and Innovation in Portugal, which coincide with the National Scientists' Day, and moreover, this will be the year where Portugal celebrates the 25th anniversary of the Foundation of Science and Technology, whose role is never enough to remember in the management and funding of the Portuguese science. It's an honor that this year Egypt is the guest country, a site where civilization and cultures meet together and mix, the crossroads of maritime transport and communications. Egypt, with 27 public universities, 38 national and private universities, 3 technological universities, and 5 international branch campuses, together with 172 private institutes plus Al-Azhar University, has more than 3.6 million students at the university level, with a plan to increase the number to 5.6 million students by year 2030. This is why, within the next few years, more than 12 international and national universities and 7 technological universities will be added to our system, Currently, 25 universities in Egypt have been ranked by the 2022 Times Higher Education Ranking, and 6 are featured in the QS World Ranking universities. In the scientific research, Egypt's peer-reviewed publication output best in Africa. And Egypt has become the top producer of peer-reviewed journal publications in Africa, according to data from SCImago. We collaborated with 210 countries, co-authoring more than 81,000 publications, and has been ranked in the 30th position out of 232 countries, and increased this research output by almost 19% in 2020, as it produced 32,323 publications. And the majority of these publications has co-authored with authors in Africa, while Europe represents the second largest co-authoring region along with Asia. Both our countries' internationally co-authored publications represent 51% and 52% respectively. Moreover, between 2016 and 2021, Egypt and Portuguese authors collaborated on an overall of more than 1,464 publications, and the impact has measured by the field-weighted citation impact was 9.44, which is the highest for Egypt collaboration after Finland, and it represents 844% more than the world average. And the dominant subject between our two countries in those publication areas were medicine and physics. Egypt's research output appears across the wide spectrum, including agriculture science, computer applications and networks, engineering and technology, physical sciences, medicine, veterinary sciences, but less in social sciences, art, and humanities. Moreover, Egypt now is considered as a medical research hub in Africa and the Middle East, through partnership with countries in West Europe and North America, as recently indicated by researchers by SCImago data sets. And the country published 4,193 papers in general medicine, 946 in pharmaceutical sciences, 914 in drug discovery, and 911 in surgery, and 589 in biomedical engineering, and more than 500 publications on oncology. And a database revealed that the past 5 years was for Egypt research capacity is on an outward trajectory, with its share of Africans' publications in peer-reviewed journals in about 23%. With more than 140,000 staff members and 415,000 postgraduate students, reform of Egyptian higher education was our main target goal. And that's why Egypt today is adopting serious reform policies whose results are reflecting in the growing confidence of the world that we are moving forward on the right track with persistence and determination. The target of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research within Egypt Vision 2030 are increasing the global competitiveness index for higher education and training, decreasing unemployment rate among university graduates to total unemployment according to specialization, increasing percentage of technical and vocational education in the fields of specialization, and boosting Egypt's rank in the World Bank Index for Technical Education. The education pillar aims for the higher education quality and training system available to all without discrimination within an efficient, just, sustainable, and flexible institutional framework, providing the necessary skills to students and trainees and to think creativity and empower them technically and technologically. A proposed for strategy to develop university education program to match the most recent and most common jobs of the future until 2050 was prepared by Supreme Council of Universities, and the strategy aimed at creating new inter-educational and trans-educational programs to keep pace with the changes and the challenges of the technological progress and this great disruption that's happening on an everyday basis. and to meet the needs of the labor market in the incoming era in cases of many fields like robotics, big data, genomics, healthcare experts, artificial intelligence, and system assisting humans, self-driving transports, and a lot of Internet of Things and many other of advanced technological disciplines. Internationalization is important, but not as a goal by itself. But it has means to strengthen the quality of research and as means to increase the impact of research. When knowledge is spread across borders, new solutions to old problems are found. Connections and valuable network occurs, and research of high international quality for the benefit of both the society and industry is fulfilled. Paradigm shift in today's world have identified the machine industrial era being replaced by technology information era, especially in the time of crisis like what we have in COVID-19. Similarly, production processes have moved from products to knowledge. Workplace has moved from physical to virtual, and it focuses at change from worker to customer. In terms of education, this means we should create knowledge that is accessible with the focus on the student. The massification of higher education and increasing marketization of education have quickened the pace and in some cases changed the nature of international university cooperations. Today, universities from linkage with each other in order to be able to compete. Globalization has also led to more and more strategic alliance among multiple partners across national borders, coupled with the advances of information technology and the forces of globalization have transformed the concept of time and space, and universities are now operating across these boundaries. The internationalization approach comprises building partnership and network, creating bilateral agreements, participating in worldwide programs and organization, and facilitating students and staff mobility. We acknowledge the strong role played by the Portuguese universities and researchers on the international scene. It encourages developing such partnership and cooperation agreement with worldwide leading pedagogical institutions. Last year, we signed a historic memorandum of understanding with the Portuguese Ministry of Higher Education, where Portuguese higher education institutions were permitted for the first time to administer, in cooperation with Egyptian universities, their study programs and to confer Portuguese academic degree in the Arab Republic of Egypt, after fulfilling the conditions and requirements stated by the Egyptian national laws. Accordingly, this year we are celebrating the opening of the new international branch campus of Nova University, Lisbon, one of Europe's top universities, which has chosen to launch its first branch ever outside Portuguese borders in Egypt at the Knowledge Hub. This offers a chance to study Nova's innovative bachelor degrees and programs and graduate with degrees exactly mirroring those awarded to Nova University Lisbon graduates. Other cooperation activities between Egypt and Portugal included the Portuguese department in faculty of Al Alsun and Ain Shams University, the first of its kind at the level of Egyptian government universities, and it taught by a group of professors from both Ain Shams University and the University of Porto. The cooperation supported the exchange of professors and students through grants from the Authority, Erasmus of the European Union, as well as enhancing the quality of program offering in cooperation with the College of Al Alsun by submitting periodic reports to the study plan and course disruption. As the scientific research cooperation and with the environmental and social changes which are deeply affecting the Euro-Mediterranean agro-food system and water resources, climate change, unsustainable agriculture practices, new lifestyle behavior, and low profitable of small holders all put a strain on the sustainable and healthy development of our region, with major impact on our society. And accordingly, Egypt STI Strategy 2030 pay too much to the environmental research aiming at supporting national and international efforts to reduce the carbon dioxide emission, and with huge mega projects launched at expansion of metro networks, trains, electric cars, a replacement of all outdated cars by new cars, and also by natural gas construct and renewable national network of roads and the necessary infrastructure, and this as well as establishment of small and sustainable cities, launched mega agricultural project to rationalize water use, line canals, integrate coastal zone management, and a huge project to reclaim 1.5 million feddans of West Desert and other governorates, plus building the 4th largest solar power plant in the world in Aswan government under the name of Bimban Solar Park. In this context, we extend the invitation to all of you to attend COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and that's why the scientific cooperation between our two countries is crucial, where the pillars of the success of this cooperation are mutual respect, common goals, and values. Egypt and Portugal are partners in several projects which included and not limited to cooperation in the Blue Med initiative, Leap Agri, and Leap for FENSA initiatives. And in Prima initiative, Egypt is partner in 56 projects with Portugal. And Portugal is partner in 51 projects out of these, and this is 21 common ongoing projects between our two beloved countries. We are still looking forward to many more channels of cooperation, and we are certain that this cooperation will impact the quality of leaders that are able to contribute solutions to both countries' development and to meet all the challenges that we all face. It will also lead to improved private and public sector performance, and I believe wholeheartedly that the outcome of this Egyptian-Portuguese cooperation are a definite indicator that there are still immense opportunities to mainstream this successful experience. It is our great pleasure to invite Portugal to be the guest of honor in the 8th Cairo International Exhibition of Innovation, which will be held in December 2022. I hope Your Excellency will accept this invitation, under the patronage of His Excellency, the President of Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Again, and finally, thank you for having Egypt as the guest country, and wish you all a very successful meeting, and congratulations to all those who will be delivered medals of Science Metri 2022, and thank you very much.
Chamo ao palco a Ministra da Ciência, Tecnologia e Ensino Superior, Elvira Fortunato.
Excelentíssimo Sr. Ministro do Ensino Superior e da Investigação Científica do Egito, Professor Khaled Ghaffar, Excelentíssima Presidente da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia, Professora Helena Pereira, Excelentíssimas Comissárias do Encontro Ciência 2022, Professora Teresa Ferreira e Professora Teresa Pinto Correia. Bom dia aos presentes e também aos que nos seguem através das plataformas digitais. I would like to begin by welcome our guests from Egypt. We have a strong cooperation, as it was mentioned previously, in science and higher education with Egypt, which was reinforced last year with the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding. As a result of this memorandum, it has been possible to promote the mobility of both teachers and scientists between Portuguese and Egyptian institutions, as well as new courses, as it was mentioned. And that, I hope, this cooperation can be increasingly strengthened for the development of science and higher education in both countries. Allow me now to turn to Portuguese. Gostaria também de dirigir umas palavras às professoras Teresa Pinto Correia e Teresa Ferreira, que amavelmente aceitaram o convite para comissariarem a edição deste ano do Encontro Ciência e que delinearam o programa do evento, tornando-o tão interessante quanto atual. Quero agradecer também à Fundação para a Ciência e a Tecnologia e dar mais uma vez os parabéns em nome da professora Helena Pereira pelos 25 anos da FCT. Aliás, também devido a isso, se calhar estou aqui hoje a falar convosco. À Agência Nacional para a Cultura Científica e Tecnológica, Ciência Viva, e à Comissão Parlamentar de Educação e Ciência, bem como toda a equipa do Comissariado do Encontro, pela dedicação e esforço na organização e promoção deste encontro, e muito obrigada também aos participantes que se inscreveram nesta edição, que já é a 10ª. No total, foram recebidas mais de 3.000 inscrições para os 3 dias, que inclui 6 sessões plenárias, 66 sessões temáticas, com cerca de 400 oradores, 225 comunicações e 52 demonstrações. Estes números revelam o enorme esforço e dedicação que as organizadoras atribuem ao encontro Ciência, assim como à forma como a própria comunidade científica aderiu mais uma vez ao Encontro Anual de Ciência. É um imenso prazer estar neste palco num evento com a relevância do Encontro Ciência, em particular neste ano de 2022, que desejo e julgo poder afirmar, todos desejamos, seja o ano que marca o início do fim de um tempo particularmente difícil para todos nós. É certo que vos falo quando ainda nos encontramos a atravessar a pandemia de Covid-2019, mas também é certo que este é o tempo para iniciarmos uma nova fase. Uma fase de recuperação baseada numa reflexão de que, espero, ficou para trás. Recordo-me de, no ano passado, aqui mesmo no Encontro Ciência 2021, ter referido que durante a pandemia a sociedade ficou mais atenta à ciência, tornou-se mais visível a importância da ciência. E permitam-me afirmar que isso aconteceu em muito graças à nossa comunidade académica e científica e aos nossos investigadores, às nossas instituições, aos nossos docentes, aos nossos estudantes. Todos eles souberam e conseguiram adaptar-se a circunstâncias tão difíceis e tão inéditas criadas pela crise sanitária. Foram eles que demonstraram a importância da ciência e do conhecimento desenvolvidos no nosso país e graças aos quais conseguimos reagir tão bem. Insisto, por isso, na importância do ensino superior e da investigação científica para o desenvolvimento do país e na relevância das redes colaborativas entre investigadores, instituições, empresas e sociedade civil para garantir um futuro mais resiliente, mais sustentável e mais inclusivo. Agora, cabe-nos continuar a promover este trabalho de equipa, porque só assim conseguiremos chegar mais longe, só assim conseguiremos recuperar. Essa recuperação deve assentar na qualificação dos portugueses, no desenvolvimento da ciência e num esforço de convergência europeia até 2030, designadamente em termos de ação climática e das oportunidades associadas à inovação e digitalização da nossa sociedade e economia. Olhando para o programa deste Encontro de Ciência, repare na preocupação e visão que o Comissariado e as entidades organizadoras tiveram na escolha dos temas. Estamos perante um programa que estimulará, ao longo dos 3 dias, o debate em redor das prioridades do Governo e da Europa. Aproveitar de forma criteriosa e rigorosa os recursos financeiros disponibilizados pela União Europeia e tornar o espaço europeu mais sustentável, mais inclusivo, mais digital e também mais justo. Estão criadas as condições para, ao longo destes 3 dias, a reflexão ser tão profunda como fundamental, tão intensa como atual. Este ano, por coincidência, celebramos também em conjunto o Dia Nacional dos Cientistas, que é precisamente hoje, 16 de maio, dia do nascimento do professor José Mariano Gago. Estão criadas, portanto, as condições para, ao longo destes 3 dias, a reflexão ser tão profunda como fundamental, tão intensa como atual. Muito obrigada a todas e a todos, muito bom dia e desejo, acima de tudo, um excelente Ciência 2022. Muito obrigada.
Passamos agora ao debate desta primeira plenária do primeiro dia do Encontro Ciência 2022, que que conta com o coordenador da Unidade de Ciência do Centro Comum de Investigação da Comissão Europeia, David Mayer, e o presidente da Agência de Financiamento da Ciência, Tecnologia e Inovação do Egito, Wallace Chita. Para moderar, dou a palavra a Teresa Ferreira, comissária do Encontro Ciência 2022.
Thank you very much, and could I have my slideshow up, please? So, thank you once again to the organisers for inviting the European Commission to come and talk on this subject. The topic of the whole conference is building the future with science, so I want to talk about building future policies with science. I work for the European Commission's Joint Research Centre. This is the science and knowledge service of the European Commission. We are trying to bring science into EU policy processes. Now, in case you want to try and find me at the coffee break, it's the other department that has all the money. So don't come and ask me about how to get your project funded by EU funds. I'm sorry, that's DG Research. We are the ones thinking about the relation between science and research and policy. And I hope this morning to try and convince you that Europe needs Portuguese science and research to help tackle the problems we face. And it's difficult, but we know how to build policies with science. So why does policy making need science? 4 reasons I'm going to take you through. Firstly, because we are facing an unprecedented set of complex societal challenges, which only the unique nature of scientific knowledge can help us solve. Secondly, policymakers at EU level are now more clearly integrating the need for science and research into the policy-making processes. Thirdly, we need to bring scientific facts and reasoning into public debate. And lastly, because our citizens want science in the policy debate. These facts have been known for a long time, but I think it's COVID that has really brought the need for science for policy to the front pages. For the first time, it became obvious that the problems posed by COVID could not be solved without a massive use of science. It showed that we need science from an enormous range of disciplines, both natural and social. But it also showed that this is not straightforward, that it's not simply a question of plugging the science into the policy process, turning the handle, and then good policies come out at the other end. In fact, the relationship between science, politics, and policy is a difficult one and a complicated one. So we need to think about how we design our advisory structures, how we communicate the uncertainty associated with available knowledge and data, and how we bring scientists into the public domain. And I think there were a lot of good practice and good experience came out of how Portugal handled COVID. So we should learn from the good experiences that took place. And this is an example of the kind of open meetings that we saw in Portugal, where the encounters between researchers and policymakers were also open to the public, which is, I think, important for transparency reasons. So the second reason why we need science for policy is because the policymakers are asking for it. So at the heart of EU policymaking is the better regulation process, and the recent iteration of these guidelines clearly say that scientific evidence is a cornerstone of better regulation. And for the first time ever, there are clearer calls in these guidelines to involve researchers and scientists much earlier in the process to make sure that we have the evidence to frame and understand the problem. Also, what I think is interesting, our colleagues in the reform part of the Commission who are looking at the structural reform of the state, they put out a document last year which very clearly says there is no future for public administration and public policy making without the systematic consideration of scientific knowledge. So they see that this is a strategic issue if we are to rise to the public policy challenges we face. And last, we're beginning to see these changes in research policy as well, with the emphasis on societal challenges, missions, knowledge valorization, all these sorts of things. So the deep drivers from the public policy side are also calling for greater science in public policy. If we look also at the public debate, so increasingly citizens are coming across fake news every day or almost every day, and citizens lastly want scientists to get involved. So 7 out of 10 of European citizens agreed in a recent Eurobarometer that scientists should intervene in political debate to ensure that decisions take into account scientific evidence, and this was even higher in Portugal. But this is not, it's not straightforward, and there are 4 aspects of this I want to take you through. Firstly, we need the skills and mindsets at both sides of the science policy interface. Secondly, it's not good enough just to have well-meaning, well-intentioned and clever people. We do actually need to systematize and organize the process by which science gets into policy. Thirdly, we need to be aware of there are real limits as to how far science can go in helping policy, and we need to understand them. And lastly, this is not a bilateral, binary relationship. Both the science and the policy must be done in a way that brings citizens into the discussions. So firstly, looking at what sort of skills and capacities do scientists and policymakers need. So we, for the last couple of years, have been running an exercise to look into the challenges around science for policy, and we have kept open a survey. So this is a non-scientific sample, but quite a large one, of people, researchers and policymakers interested in science for policy. And when it comes to policymakers, do they ask the right questions? The majority appears to say no. Do they consult a broad evidence base? No, on balance. Do they understand or appraise scientific evidence? Again, on balance, the message is no. Researchers, are they good at synthesizing, translating, communicating evidence? On balance, no. Is the science arriving too late for policymakers? On balance, yes. So it's an unscientific sample, but an interesting one, which I think gives some clues as to where at least people working in this field think the problems are. So what are we doing to try and address this question of the skills of both scientists and policymakers? And that's important, that we are looking at both sides of the equation. It's not enough if we have skilled and effective researchers. We also need policymakers working in public institutions who have the capacities to ask for the right evidence, to appraise it critically, and then be in a position to communicate it to politicians, but also to scientists. So we have developed a competence framework which looks at the attitudes, the mindsets, and the skills required for both policymakers and researchers. Policymakers covers not just working with science, but the whole range of skills that they need. But it includes at the center the competence cluster called working with evidence there. So we have clearly situated the ability of policymakers to ask for, to interrogate, and to use scientific evidence as a core competence to be a policymaker. And this is a competence framework which is at the heart of the future profession of policymaking within the European Commission. These competence frameworks are something we're about to publish shortly and make available for any policymaking organization, but also any research organization. But we have a mirror competence framework looking at researchers, not covering the business of being a researcher, but covering this business of how to become effective at influencing policy. And these frameworks work at an individual level, but also at an organizational level. So it's a series of tools to enable any organization in the research community that wants to raise its game in influencing policy. It gives you an ability to audit the skills that you have in the organization and improve. So this is the researcher's competence framework unpacked. We have 5 clusters of competences, a total of 27 competences. as I said, bringing together the knowledge you need, the skills you need, and the attitudes, and also 4 different progression levels. So what does it mean to be a beginner? What does it mean to be intermediate level? What does it mean to be advanced? And what does it mean to be an expert? And we describe those in practical day-to-day terms. There's a lot there, so just to be clear, we're not trying to create supermen or superwomen here. These are competencies which organizations need across the board, we think. We have a number of resources as well that we've worked on. We designed these originally for our own researchers. There are over 2,000 researchers within the Joint Research Centre. So we did it for ourselves, but we realized that these are competencies which are interesting across the board, so we've made them available. We have a handbook. We have a 2-day course where we are gradually training networks of trainers around the European Union to give this course to researchers. We have some top 10 tips. And we have an introductory 90-minute free webinar, which you can click on the link, find that course, and anyone can take it. The second main area we're working on, as I said, it's not enough to have well-trained people. You do actually need to systematize at some stage the business of how science gets into policy. And we spent the last 2 years looking at this problem across the European Union, with a number of workshops, discussion papers, and we now have a community of 1,500 professionals looking at these questions of how to build essentially a European ecosystem of science for policy organizations. And ecosystem is the metaphor we're going for. It's an organic metaphor rather than a mechanistic metaphor. Sometimes people talk about machines or mechanisms, because what we think is that how the knowledge gets into policy is very much an organic phenomenon about how connections are made, and also because there is no one model that works in every country and every organization. Every country has its own history, its own forms of governance, and there is certainly no European blueprint, but instead we need to foster connections between different parts of the ecosystem. And an ecosystem in any country will consist of the people inside government, the people in the academies, the people in the universities, the people in the research agencies, the people in the regulatory agencies. And we need to find new ways to make the connections happen. We did actually do a complete workshop looking at the situation in Portugal, and a very good background document was produced for us, setting out the state of play of science for policy in Portugal. And in summary, the conclusions were there are many ecosystems, but they're not necessarily well interconnected. So ecosystems looking at agriculture or the environment are perhaps not so well connected with security issues or economic issues. There was a lack of awareness in the policymaking community about what sort of science is out there. The system very much depends on informal contacts, which are very powerful and very useful, but a few more formal contacts and formal mechanisms to get the science into policy would probably help. There were issues around trust levels between scientists and policymakers, and also the willingness of the academic community to engage in policymaking activities, the incentives, and the transparency of all these connections was one of the issues that was raised. But what we also saw clearly is that things are moving. Things are really moving in Portugal. Firstly, the constitution of Plan App, the organization at the center of the Portuguese public administration, the Council of Associated Labs, and the CNCTI. So very, very promising and optimistic a future ahead, and a clear idea of where the issues are. Going back to the survey that we did of interested professionals, this is a subset of the 112 Portuguese responses we got, which appears to confirm what we found in the study, is that there is a belief that the system in Portugal is fragmented. There is a lack of regular and well-supported opportunities to meet and exchange ideas between scientists and policymakers. And research organizations thinking about getting into this field don't really know where to start. So some again, some interesting challenges there, which I think give us a good evidence base to work out what should change. We are now trying to bring all this together, so we are producing what is known in the jargon as a staff working document. That's simply a factual document saying what is happening in the European Union, because there is a lot happening in the European Union at the moment. So we are hoping to bring this in collaboration with our research colleagues to the Council of Research Ministers later in the year. And what we're hoping is this is sort of a consciousness-raising moment at the political level across the European Union that science for policy is a thing. It's a big thing, and every country needs to look into itself and ask the question of how do we do this thing in our own country? Are we doing it as well as we need to face the problems we can see ahead? And that's because ultimately we want to make sure this is all is connected up at the European Union level, because it's clear that there is no one person, there is no one organization, there is no one country that has all the science it needs to solve its problems within its borders. No one. So we need to connect. We need to join up. We're hoping this will lead also to eventually some further political action. We'll have to see how that goes in the Council. At the same time, we are working with our colleagues in DG Reform, who have given us their biggest ever grant for a project to work with 8 member states to help them take their science policy ecosystems to the next level, which is a very practical example of how to address these problems. Third thing I want to talk about is the limits. We have produced a series of reports recently looking at the science of science for policy itself. So we're a scientific organization. If we're thinking about why science for policy is so difficult, we thought, well, let's look at the science. And that's looking at the underlying relationship between the psychology and the politics. So what are we like as political animals? How does our psychology work? And I hope you'll find some interesting pointers into this, which I think are very, very important. I think the first message to come out of this work is that science cannot answer a political question. That is a category mistake to think that science can answer a scientific question. Science cannot answer a political question. The essence of politics is making normative values choices, and by definition, science cannot do that. Second message that comes out is science is not value-free. Yes, experiments can be reproduced and falsified, but that does not mean that the process by which we decide what we're going to research, which questions to ask, which results to highlight, in which order, in which way, these are questions saturated with values. So if scientists want to influence policy and politics, which is a values process, they also need to check their values and understand their values and be transparent about where they're coming from. And the research will be better for it, and the impact will be greater. And last important fact is there appears to be a very important cognitive bias we all suffer from, which is my side bias, which is encoded into the way we think. And what this means is when we are faced with facts or information that challenge our core identities or our core values, we get busy with attacking the facts. And what is so important about that bias, most cognitive biases, they get better, they get weaker as IQ goes up. This one doesn't. So if you've got a Nobel Prize or you've got that article in Nature or Science, you are just as vulnerable. All it means is when you are faced with some science that challenges your beliefs and identities, you come up with fancier arguments as to why it's wrong. So, very important message for scientists to take home when entering the political arena, to understand their own values and identities. And the last point I wanted to talk about is this is not a bilateral relationship. This is a relationship where we need to bring citizens into the process for 2 reasons. We sometimes talk about the crisis in our democracies at the moment. Sometimes we also talk about the epistemic crisis. It's the same crisis. We have a crisis of trust in authority. So we need to open up the processes of science and research and open up the policy-making process because then that means that the good ideas, the good science we come up with, and the good policies we come up with are trusted and then acted upon and implemented. And we saw throughout the pandemic, it's no good if you come up with a perfect piece of science and a perfect piece of policy and the citizens don't trust you. Because if they don't trust, then they will not follow in their own personal behaviours in line with what you're recommending. We have some wonderful examples in Portugal. This is an example, a project called Ocean Alive, which is talking about understanding about how to keep the Sado estuary, seagrass meadows, healthy. This is crucial for the local shellfish, which is a huge part of the habitat of the local dolphins. And what this project has been doing is in bringing local fishermen in as keepers of the sea to help them understand the science and the policy measures. And we have an explosion of these sorts of techniques across the European Union at the moment. We have a deliberative wave, and this is a crucial part of doing good science and good policy. And we're here to help you do this. We have a competence centre on participatory and deliberative democracy, by coincidence run by my fantastic Portuguese colleague, Angela Pereira, and we have hundreds of resources there to help researchers and policymakers do that difficult job of bringing citizens into the process. And what is always so constantly surprising and refreshing is citizens always know more than the researchers and the stakeholders. If you prepare them and explain to them what the issues are, they can tell you things that the other experts cannot tell you. So last slide. There is enormous potential in bringing science into policy, but the metaphor we need in our mind is this is an ecosystem, and like all ecosystems, it's all about the connections. And we have 4 levels of connections we need to make. We desperately need to find new ways to connect different disciplines. We all say that's important. In practice, we're all pretty bad at it. Secondly, we need to find new ways to connect scientists and policymakers. And that starts with a fundamental understanding of how different these communities are. Thirdly, what we hope is that scientific actors and researchers in Portugal, we can help you connect more intensely to thicken up those relationships. And lastly, what we want to do is to knit the Portuguese ecosystem of science and policy into the wider European ecosystem. Because if we don't make these connections, we won't be able to meet the challenges that we face. Thank you.
David, thank you. I wanted to ask you something before moving on to the next speaker. Do you believe that for making this bridge between science and policy, we need, for these competences and for these connections, we need mediators, either single mediators or collective, like think tanks or something? Would it be a nice, a good way to go forward?
We certainly do need people who sit between the scientific community and research community and policy making and are comfortable and have good connections in both communities. You can call them mediators, you can call them bridge builders, you can call them translators. The phrase that we prefer is knowledge brokers. The people who don't have all the answers, but they know the people who have all the answers and who are able to facilitate these connections. Every healthy ecosystem needs some of these people in government, perhaps in research agencies. It doesn't really matter where they are, but people happy with both sides, with both of these different environments. And probably somewhere in every country you need someone who worries about the health of the ecosystem, who gets up every morning and says, are those connections being made? Because that's the goal we want to reach, is whenever a policymaker takes a decision, do they have the best available science in the world that is relevant for that question next to them on the desk or in their head? That's the aim we want to get to. If there's a piece of science out there that informs their decision, do they know it at the moment of decision making? And the only way to make that happen is to organize and systematize the serendipitous connections that we need.
Thanks. Okay, so I think I will call then Dr. Mahmoud Sak, President of the Academy, please. Dr. Sak is President of the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology of Egypt and is going to ingratiate us with
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank and appreciate very much the so kind invitation of Portugal Ministry of Science, Technology and Higher Education for this great opportunity. And thanks for His Excellency Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Dr. Khaled Abafar, for giving us the opportunity actually to give you an overview about Egypt STI strategy. Of course, we believe in Egypt that now is the time for innovation and international collaboration. In fact, the conclusion of this presentation was highlighted and outlined in the opening speech of His Excellency Minister Khaled Abafar, but let me give you some in-depth information about Egypt STI system. In this presentation, I will give you an overview about STI ecosystem in Egypt, STI Strategy 2030, action plan of Ministry of Higher Education to foster innovation, examples of some output, the newly developed mechanisms by Ministry of Higher Education to respond to challenges, breakthrough like COVID-19 and the climate changes. And at the end of the presentation, I will highlight in more details about Egypt-Portugal collaboration beyond Ciência 2022. To get you familiar with Egypt STI ecosystem, as you see, our ecosystem is quite simple. The first level in Egypt STI ecosystem is a presidential advisory council affiliated to Mr. President of Egypt. And this council actually put the strategic direction of the country in the field of science, technology, and innovation. The second level, you see, Higher Council for Science Technology, HCST, chaired by Prime Minister. Secretary General is the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. And this is actually the most important pillar in the system. Of course, it also puts the strategic direction of the country in the field of science and technology, overseeing the overall STI ecosystem, and of course, monitoring the performance of different entities in the system. The third level is the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, and the ministry has two technical arms. The first one is the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology, ASRT, and the Academy is the national think tank of the country, is the house of expertise. It provides the technical support, strategic studies, roadmaps to the ministry and to the cabinet as well, and at the same time also it supports the innovation ecosystem in Egypt. The Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in Egypt also has another two important councils. One is the Supreme Councils of Universities, and this is actually taking care and providing the technical support related to higher education to the Minister of Higher Education. And the second council is the Council of Research Centers and Institutes. The fourth level in the system, as you see in the green, is the National Funding Organization. Our main national funding organization is STDF, and Professor Wala Ashita will speak in more details about STDF today. And a newly established funding mechanisms named Innovator Support Fund, or IFS. In fact, this is one of the main achievements of the last few years of Egypt STI system, simply because the fund in IFS is not a public fund. It's a new resources actually to put more money to fund scientific research out of the public budget of the government. The last, but the most important layer in STI ecosystem in Egypt, of course, is universities and research centers. So it's just an outlines of Egypt STI ecosystem. I'm going to speak about some indicators related to science, technology, innovation because it's available everywhere, but it's very clear that the performance of Egypt, according to international databases like SciMago, is in a very good position. Also, the public money allocated for scientific research in Egypt during the last 5 years is increasing significantly. And we moved from 18 billion in 2015 to about 60 billion Egyptian pound in 2021. And now almost 1% of the GDP is allocated to scientific research according to the Egyptian constitution, which was approved in 2014. Here you see the ranking of Egypt. Significant increase and enhancement in ranking of Egypt based on international publication. And as you see, in 2021, we are in the position number 26. When it comes to patent, unfortunately, although the number of filed patents every year are more than 2,000 filed, but the number of granted patents is quite low, like 500, it's only 25% of the submitted file granted a patent from Egyptian Patent Office. This slide is very important. It compares very quickly between the current status of science, technology, innovation in Egypt and Portugal as well. When you look at the left of the slide, you will see that Egypt is in the position 26, as I mentioned, according to international publication. And Portugal is in the position number 28. But when you look at the Global Innovation Index, you see Egypt is in 94th position and Portugal is 31st. So Portugal is highly innovative country, not only at the level of European Union, but globally also. 31st, it's a good position actually in the field of Global Innovation Index. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is, based on in-depth SWOT analysis published 3 or 4 years ago, that the Egyptian STI community produces good quality international publication, produces knowledge. But the capability of the system to transform the knowledge into economic value, the innovation, is very low. It's not the case in Portugal. In Portugal, the capability of the system to transform the knowledge into innovation and economic value is extremely high. This can be easily recognized from the information of Global Innovation Index. So, during the preparation of Egypt's strategy for science, technology, and innovation 2030, the aforementioned conclusion was considered. So, the strategy of Egypt STI 2030 built to bridge the gap between academia and industry and to boost the innovation ecosystem in Egypt. And the same also is the same objectives also is highlighted in Egypt Vision for Sustainable Development 2030. Let us move to the outlines of Egypt STI strategy. As you see, of course, the vision is to boost knowledge-based economy. And the mission is to nurture enabling environment for science, technology, and innovation. And to achieve this strategic direction, there are two main pillars for Egypt STI strategy. The first one is to nurture enabling environment, and the second pillar is to pay too much attention to production, transfer, and localization of technology. Of course, the action plan to materialize the strategic objective of Egypt STI strategy link between the national objectives and, of course, SD goals of UN, as you see. I will move very quickly to the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research Action Plan to post innovation and technology transfer and commercialization. The first important steps, actually, which took place during the last 3 years in Egypt, especially through the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, is to create enabling legislation environment in Egypt. In my opinion, and of course our colleagues in the field of science, technology, and innovation believes too much that the most important achievement of this government is Science, Technology, and Innovation Incentives Law. It's known in Egypt as Law number 23 for the year 2018. It's posed too much the innovation ecosystem in Egypt. A lot of incentives to post the innovation and to post technology transfer, commercialization, and the economic management of research institutions in Egypt. In addition to this law, several laws actually have been issued during the last 3 years. One of them is related to SDF and the change of SDF to a national authority with a lot of facilities, a lot of elasticities, and also establishing the Egyptian Space Agency and establishing the Innovator Support Fund, as I mentioned. So the government or the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research supported some programs to create enabling environments through new legislatives to boost the system. Of course, the second most important plan of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research to support innovation and entrepreneurship is the political support from the top management of the country. As you see, His Excellency President of Egypt, President Fattah al-Sisi, and His Excellency Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Minister of Military Production, almost most members of the cabinet supported the innovation and the innovation exhibition and to speak with inventors, innovators, and entrepreneurs, and so on. This is really very, very important. In addition to a very long list of new funding mechanisms dedicated mainly to innovation, to startups, and so on. And I will present very quickly. Here is the action plan of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research, as I mentioned, to support innovation ecosystem in Egypt. When it comes to human capitals, so many initiatives, national programs to post innovation, informal and innovative education of science, and so on. And as you see, for instance, the field of human capital, we have a lot of programs, eClub, Children University, IPR Academy, IPR Help Desk, and others. And when it comes to growth, a lot of programs again. And the most important issue as a result of the new legislation is the establishment of a new company owned by Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research for technology transfer and commercialization. And when it comes to fund, as I mentioned, we have a very good national funding organization, STDF. New funding mechanism outside of the public money is IFS, and of course also ASRT provides some public support to innovation and to mega national project. When it comes to support, the ministry launched a very optimistic program for technological incubators called Intilaq, accelerators, technology transfer offices and commercialization, and the others. So this slide actually summarizes the action plan of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research to boost the innovation ecosystem in Egypt. As you see, there are some programs in more detail. This is Children University programs. Today, of course, in the Ministry of Higher Education, we believe that today children are tomorrow tools for building modern nation and Posting Egypt. These programs became a member of European Network of Children Universities since 2019. Intilaq, National Technological Incubator Programs. So this bridge actually very clearly actually highlights the objectives of these programs. The objective of the programs is to, again, to bridge the gap between academia and industry, to foster the transformation of innovative knowledge and solution and research outcome into technological startups and so on. Nowadays, we have 28 incubators, incubated about 182 startups, created about 1,000 jobs, 120 products and services, and the revenue is 21 million Egyptian pound. TICO's Technology, Innovation and Commercialization Offices, more than 58 offices in all Egyptian universities and research centers. This TICO office is supported, by the way, actually the development of IPR policies for 22 universities, supported 55 startups, and as you can see, some KPIs indicated actually the performance of this program. Again, one of the most important programs funded by by African Development Bank. It was a grant on competitive basis. And this program actually is running by the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology in Egypt, called Tanmiya wa Tatweer. It's clean and green incubator. And through this incubator, actually, we are planning to incubate 480 startups. All actually are focusing on green technologies. Women Up, a new incubator supported by EU. It supports the women entrepreneur in rural area, one of the most successful programs in Egypt, as I mentioned, supported by EU. Innovation, or IPR Help Desk, its online portal provides consultation in the field of intellectual property rights to startups, to business sector, to industry, and we are providing such kind of consultation, of course, free of charge. And we are very happy that we succeeded actually to post the innovation and IPR ecosystem in Egypt through several programs. And this program also is funded by EU. One of the most important projects launched by Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in the last few years is the Egyptian Innovation Bank. It was a recommendation by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to establish a portal, actually, for social, open, and technological innovation. And if you have time, I could advise you to visit eib.eg. It's like a repository for innovations. And our role as the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research is to facilitate the networking between the inventor, innovator, banker, investor, policymaker, and so on. It's a good platform, I believe. National Academy of Intellectual Property Rights. In fact, in Egypt, we are in their need to invest more and more effort in IPR education and awareness. Especially, we are promoting and we are looking and we are attracting international investment. So it's recommended actually for the country to be quite familiar with IPR, and we invest too much in this issue in collaboration with WIPO. By the way, the Egyptian Patent Office is one of the entity belonging to the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology. TV program for innovators and inventors called Cairo Innovates. Again, another mechanism is actually to highlight and to disseminate the culture of innovation and invention. So I will run some examples, some, let us say, tangible outcome of our project. Now we have some products developed from startups incubated by Intilaq technological incubators, ventilators, for instance, one of the most important. We succeeded the country actually to achieve better increment in the productivity of strategic crop like wheat, hybrid rice, and so on. I would like to speak in more details about this project because it's related to climate change, and I was very happy to follow the seagrass as a safeguard of oceans. In Egypt, we launched 3 years ago a very similar project, but we are focusing on mangrove, how to restore the mangrove forest in Red Sea coastal region, and how to use the mangrove forest as a source of community development. And I believe we succeeded to some extent to reintegrate mangrove in the Red Sea, coastal region of the Red Sea in Egypt. And this project actually was highlighted by many Euronews, for instance, Green Mangrove Revolution, how Egypt is prioritizing climate project in the run-up to COVID-27. In the field of renewable energy, we succeeded actually to develop PV-powered mobile water desalination units and other. I know I'm running out of time, but I see that almost 11. Can I have more paper? Yeah, okay. It's a very long presentation. Okay. I would like also to highlight, this is one of the most important projects in the field of water desalination. We actually supported knowledge and technological alliances for water desalination, and through this alliance, it's a national alliance from 15 universities, research center, private company, and the governmental entity to locally manufacturing the high-pressure pump, which is one of the most component of water desalination industry, pilot planet for local manufacturing of membranes. In the field of renewable energy, the biggest R&D or research development and innovation facilities in the region and in the Middle East are belonging to the Ministry of Higher Education. And as you see here, we have a pilot planet for research development and manufacturing of PV, the biggest concentrated solar power for and water desalination in the region also are belonging to the ministry and funded by EU, called MATS in Burj Al Arab, Alexandria. And this is the media coverage of this very important project. We pay too much attention to biodiversity record. As you see here, Wells of Egypt, Encyclopedia of Medicinal Plant, using DNA barcoding technology, using biotechnology to produce seeds and offshoots of dead palm, the most important crop in Egypt. It's too much, actually. I cannot make it in less than 30 minutes. But again, this is a rapid response of the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research post-COVID priority and the preparedness of Egypt STI. As a result of this strategic studies, now Egypt supporting Egyptian reference genome, and we will speak in this project about this project in another session. Let's go to COP27. We have an integrated national and international plan for climate change adaptation, now or never. It's actually prepared by the Ministry of Higher Education, and would like to invite our colleagues from Portugal to be with us and to support Egypt's efforts actually in the field of climate changes and through to COP27. Too much to say. Okay. The ministry launched 2 weeks ago a new funding mechanisms called the Green Fund, dedicated mainly to climate change. As you see, this is a fund of call of STDF and the ASRT as well. Portugal. Unfortunately, the international collaboration between Egypt and Portugal is very low compared with other members of EU. Only 3% of collaboration between Egypt and Portugal. And what I would like, of course, through different EU networks and the co-funding programs and so on, including PRIMA, of course. What I would like to say is that, of course, ASRT and FST are the main partners from the two countries. What I would like to say here to conclude that PRIMA is new, but not new. It is an excellent platform, underutilized, and could be used more and more through coordination between the two countries, in addition to, of course, establishing bilateral collaboration between the two countries. In fact, there are mutual interests between Egypt and Portugal. We are producing, and we are doing very well in the field of science, technology, and innovation. We are on the right track regarding startups, innovation, and so on. We have a very strong network of international collaborators, and of course, Portugal is a highly innovative country. So I believe that collaboration in such between those two countries is of great importance. I will stop here and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's very impressive, the amount of actions that you've been developing. And I also agree that we need to strengthen our cooperation, and PRIMA would be an excellent, excellent idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
O primeiro dia deste encontro Ciência assume especial relevância por ser também o Dia Nacional dos Cientistas, criado para reconhecer a importância dos investigadores e da investigação científica para o desenvolvimento do conhecimento e para o progresso e bem-estar da sociedade, e em homenagem ao antigo Ministro da Ciência, Tecnologia e Ensino Superior, José Mariano Gago, no dia do seu aniversário. Para assinalar a data, chamo ao palco a Presidente da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia, Helena Pereira.
Cumprimento de novo todas e todos. It is again a pleasure to welcome our guests from the Egyptian delegation and very especially the Minister for Higher Education and Scientific Research and Mr. Ambassador from the Arab Republic of Egypt, which are our guests in this event. E cumprimento a nossa Ministra da Ciência, Tecnologia e Ensino Superior, Elvira Fortunato, e em seu nome cumprimento todos os representantes das instituições que aqui estão presentes. E muito principalmente cumprimento todos os investigadores, todos aqueles que nas diversas instituições que pertencem ao nosso Sistema Nacional de Ciência e Tecnologia criam conhecimento, aplicam o conhecimento, fazem inovação. Nos laboratórios de Estado, nas unidades de investigação, nos laboratórios associados, nos laboratórios colaborativos, nas infraestruturas científicas, nos centros de interface e nas empresas. Falarei aqui brevemente da importância do conhecimento e da sua valorização nesta ocasião em que se conjugam três celebrações interligadas. A primeira celebração é este próprio encontro da ciência. Este ano, o Ciência 2022, a 10ª edição, no seguimento de uma longa série já de encontros, sempre a festejar o trabalho dos cientistas e da ciência em Portugal, e sempre também numa perspectiva global, em que tivemos já diferentes países convidados: Índia, África do Sul, Reino Unido, França e agora Egito. Esta colaboração internacional permite-nos, como também já foi falado, estreitar laços científicos para além do nosso país, estabelecer novas oportunidades de colaboração. Todos sabemos como a ciência é, de facto, uma atividade absolutamente global. A segunda celebração é a dos 25 anos da FCT. A FCT foi criada em 1997, é a Agência Nacional de Apoio a Financiamento da Ciência e pensamos que nestes 25 anos de atuação teve um papel determinante para aumentar a ciência em Portugal, aumentar em termos de dimensão, mas também em termos de qualidade e de a tornar e de lhe dar um reconhecimento internacional. Celebramos este aniversário dos 25 anos da FCT com uma série de sessões que se desenrolam ao longo do ano, todos os meses, com diferentes temas que consideramos importantes para a nossa comunidade científica e que têm lugar em diferentes cidades do país. Estamos agora aqui neste Ciência 2022, mas no fim de maio estaremos de novo noutra sessão na Covilhã, com um tema que também é muito importante no desenvolvimento da ciência e que é as mulheres na ciência. E assim continuaremos até ao fim do ano, celebrando, portanto, desta maneira diversificada e extensa, o desenvolvimento da ciência, o papel dos cientistas e também o papel da IFCT neste desenvolvimento. De facto, nestes 25 anos, a ciência mudou bastante no país. Mudou em termos de dimensão, aumentou significativamente. Isto é notório, por exemplo, se compararmos, qualquer que seja o indicador, mas, por exemplo, se compararmos a questão da despesa afeta à investigação e desenvolvimento, que em 1997 era de apenas 0,56% do PIB, e hoje, ou seja, em 2020, são os últimos dados oficiais que existem, é já de 1,62% do PIB. Houve, portanto, um crescimento claro da investigação e desenvolvimento tecnológico em Portugal. Mas não é só este aumento da ciência que existe, isto traduz-se também, por exemplo, no aumento do número de investigadores que atuam em Portugal. Eles também são hoje perto de 50 mil investigadores calculados em equivalentes de tempo integral, mas há também uma mudança estrutural importante no nosso sistema científico. Se olharmos para os valores da investigação, da ID nas empresas, vemos que houve uma alteração absolutamente significativa e determinante no nosso panorama científico. As empresas tinham uma despesa em ID de 22,5% do total da despesa em 97 e hoje é bem mais de metade, 57% da despesa em ID que é feita nas empresas. É, portanto, um panorama que temos que claramente ter em conta. Mas também houve mudanças, por exemplo, no perfil empregador dos investigadores em Portugal. Já vimos que, de facto, eles aumentaram. Temos hoje perto de 55 mil investigadores, mas, para além do aumento dos investigadores nas empresas, que claramente aumentaram, temos, por outro lado, uma diminuição no campo do sector público no Estado. Se olharmos para este sector público de investigação, vemos que nos laboratórios do Estado, que são uma peça fundamental, de facto, de apoio com conhecimento à ação governativa, em 1999 eles eram 13 e tinham quase 3.500 investigadores, sempre em ATI. Em 2022 são apenas 7 laboratórios do Estado e o número de investigadores é de 1.652. Por outro lado, tivemos um crescimento absolutamente fantástico do número de investigadores nas unidades de ID, nos laboratórios associados, nas infraestruturas científicas. Eram 10 mil em 99, são hoje quase 30 mil neste sistema público de investigação. A IFCT fez a compilação destas 3 estruturas de investigação importantíssimas no nosso sistema, o Atlas das Unidades de Investigação, o Atlas dos Laboratórios Associados e o roteiro das infraestruturas científicas. Eles existem, por enquanto, só digital, em forma digital, no site da FCT. E no sistema entrou uma nova entidade. São os laboratórios colaborativos, uma nova ideia de colaboração para criar conhecimento aplicado e para o valorizar, portanto, integrando criadores de conhecimento, disseminadores de conhecimento e aplicadores de conhecimento e com um sistema de financiamento também inovador, tripartido, em que 1/3 do financiamento se pensa que deverá ser do Estado, 1/3 será angariado de forma competitiva em concursos abertos competitivos e 1/3 sobre venda de serviços e contratos de prestação de serviços. É, de facto, um novo uma nova entidade recém-chegada. Temos atualmente 41 laboratórios colaborativos, os últimos 6 estão ainda em fase de constituição legal e, portanto, vão introduzir certamente uma nova dimensão no nosso Sistema Nacional de Ciência e Tecnologia. Portanto, isto quer dizer que temos no nosso sistema científico e tecnológico uma diversidade de instituições de diferente tipo, que se interpenetram de várias maneiras, quer em termos de temáticas, quer em termos de número de investigadores, e que terão que ser equacionadas de um modo global e integrado. Claro que a celebração dos 25 anos é sempre uma maneira, um modo de dizer e o que se vai passar a seguir. E, de facto, vemos que o sistema atingiu uma dimensão e uma maturidade grandes. No seguimento, o que é que queremos? Queremos consolidar essa maturidade, inovar na sua integração e em novos desafios. E temos que ter, obviamente, o passado mostra-nos, temos que apostar em alguns pontos. Nas empresas, sem dúvida, na criação do conhecimento, na aplicação e valorização. Na ciência, hoje em dia, não podemos esquecer de integrar as empresas. Os laboratórios de Estado, como suporte de políticas e de sustentabilidade da ID. Também o papel importantíssimo do ensino superior, que integra a ID e que liga de uma maneira virtuosa e muito profícua a docência, a ID e a valorização do conhecimento. E, obviamente, também, como pano de fundo, temos o financiamento, a necessidade de programação científica, o estatuto e a atuação da FCT como agência financiadora. Mas hoje temos outra celebração, a celebração do Dia Nacional dos Cientistas. E se nestas 3 celebrações há, digamos, um elo comum a todas elas, e que é a ciência, não é? Há também aqui um outro elemento de ligação entre todas estas celebrações, e que é a figura de José Mariano Gago, que foi o pensador e o arquiteto do nosso sistema científico e tecnológico e o construtor de muito daquilo que hoje celebramos. O Dia Nacional dos Cientistas foi consagrado no dia do nascimento de José Mariano Gago, a 16 de maio, e foi uma resolução da Assembleia da República em 2016 e que foi aprovada por unanimidade. Porque, de facto, a ciência são os cientistas, são as pessoas. As pessoas são as pessoas que fazem o conhecimento, são as pessoas que o desenvolvem, que o aplicam, que trabalham diariamente para aumentar a capacidade nacional de conhecimento e de desenvolvimento com base nesse conhecimento. O país tem também investido publicamente, e muito através da FCT, nas pessoas, quer ao nível inicial de formação avançada, através de atribuição de bolsas de doutoramento, que têm crescido ao longo dos anos. Nós hoje temos já um panorama de doutores formados e doutores em formação que nos aproxima daqueles países com os quais nos queremos comparar. Tem sido, de facto, uma aposta ganha, e os programas de doutoramento e as bolsas de doutoramento que são atribuídas constituem, de facto, um pilar importante de apoio às pessoas que iniciam a sua atividade científica. E a seguir temos os investigadores contratados e os contratos de investigadores, que também têm aumentado ao longo dos anos, e se olharem para o gráfico à direita, vemos que este crescimento dos contratos de investigadores se dá especialmente a partir do ano de 2018. É, sem dúvida, um aspecto importante. As pessoas, os investigadores, têm de ter aquilo que nós sabemos que é importante: estabilidade de carreira, valorização de carreira. Todos sabemos, e este é um desígnio nacional e também, não só um desígnio nacional, mas também objetivos europeus. A European Research Area também dá muita importância a este aspecto, é que os cientistas, os investigadores, têm que ter planos de carreira em todas as instituições. Em Portugal, os concursos para a carreira de investigadores nos laboratórios do Estado e nas instituições de ensino superior são, obviamente, importantíssimas, como também o é a valorização da integração da docência, da investigação e da participação na sociedade. Estes aspectos estão ligados a outros, também na frente de discussão europeia, que tem a ver com a avaliação de desempenho de uma forma integrativa, na existência de flexibilidade de percursos e de mobilidade sectorial e institucional e, obviamente, na integração efetiva dos investigadores na construção das estratégias científicas. Claro que, como pano de fundo para todos estes aspectos, há a necessidade de pensar elementos jurídicos e legais e regulamentares, por exemplo, Estatuto da Atividade Docente e Científica, regimes jurídicos, leis orgânicas, regulamentos, etc. Não queria terminar esta minha apresentação sem mais uma vez, de facto, saudar os cientistas e de fazer um pequeno anúncio simbólico de que, começando com os mais novos, começando com os estudantes do ensino superior que se iniciam nas suas lides científicas, de dizer que abriu hoje a candidatura ao chamado Verão Consciência. É o primeiro degrau de intervenção na ciência dos jovens estudantes e este ano, portanto, abrimos com um prazo mais alargado de possibilidade de fazer investigação nas nossas unidades de investigação. Foi publicado hoje na página da FCT e estará aberto para estágios em julho, agosto e setembro. Muito obrigada a todos.
Agradeço à Presidente da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia pela intervenção nesta edição do Encontro Ciência 2022, que assinala também os 25 anos da FCT. Vamos dar início à entrega das Medalhas de Mérito Científico, um galardão que reconhece individualidades nacionais ou estrangeiras que, pelas elevadas qualidades profissionais e de cumprimento do dever, se distinguiram por valioso e excepcional contributo para o desenvolvimento da ciência ou da cultura científica em Portugal. Trata-se de uma iniciativa instituída pelo Ministério da Ciência, Tecnologia e Ensino Superior. Para entregar as medalhas, chama ao palco a Ministra da Ciência, Tecnologia e Ensino Superior, Elvira Fortunato. Chamo Raul Iturra. Professor catedrático jubilado ISCTE, notabilizou-se nos domínios dos estudos rurais, antropologia económica, da educação e da infância. Licenciado em antropologia e doutorado em antropologia social pela Universidade de Cambridge, no Reino Unido, foi fundador do Departamento de Antropologia do ISCTE. Chamo Maria João Bebiano, licenciada em Engenharia pelo Instituto Superior Técnico e doutorada em Ecotoxicologia Marinha pela Universidade de Reading, Reino Unido, e em Oceanografia pela Universidade do Algarve. É professora catedrática jubilada e diretora do Centro de Investigação Marinha e Ambiental da Universidade do Algarve. Chamo Bernardo Harold, licenciou-se em Engenharia Químico-Industrial no Instituto Superior Técnico e em Química na Universidade de Heidelberg, na Alemanha, onde se doutorou. É professor jubilado do Instituto Superior Técnico, onde foi professor catedrático de Química Orgânica Industrial de 1962 a 2003. Chamo Maria Eduarda Gonçalves, doutorada em Direito Europeu e Internacional pela Universidade de Nice, mestre em Direito pela Universidade de Harvard, professora catedrática do ISCTE, investigadora e diretora entre 2013 a 2016 do Dinâmia 7 ISCTE. Distinguiu-se nos domínios de Direito e da Economia, Regulação da Era Digital e Estudos Sociais da Ciência e da Tecnologia. Chamo Luísa Cortesão. Dedica-se ao estudo e avaliação de sistemas educativos, problemáticas interculturais e estudos freirianos, excelência académica, cidadania e formação de adultos. Licenciada em Biologia e doutorada em Ciências da Educação, é professora emérita e catedrática jubilada da Faculdade de Psicologia e Ciências de Educação da Universidade do Porto. Ana Luísa Amaral, que por questões pessoais não pode estar presente, doutorada em Literatura Norte-Americana pela Faculdade de Letras da Universidade do Porto, tem-se dedicado aos estudos feministas, estudos de género, poéticas comparadas e estudos queer. Coautora do Dicionário da Crítica Feminista, coordenou o projeto Novas Cartas Portuguesas, 3 décadas depois, que envolveu 10 equipas internacionais e cerca de 60 investigadores e resultou na publicação de vários livros. Walter Oswald, que também não pode estar presente devido a questões pessoais, professor, médico e figura de relevo no estudo da medicina diabiótica em Portugal. Licenciado em Medicina pela Faculdade de Medicina da Universidade do Porto, em 1951, foi o primeiro diretor do Instituto de Bioética da Universidade Católica Portuguesa, no Porto. Saula Castelo Branco destacou-se na investigação de terreno em Portugal, no Egito e no Omã sobre política cultural, nacionalismo musical, identidade, música e média, modernidade, patrimonialização e música e conflito. É professora catedrática emérita de etnomusicologia na Faculdade de Ciências Sociais e Humanas da Universidade Nova de Lisboa. Foi fundadora e presidente do Instituto de Etnomusicologia, Centro de Estudos em Música e Dança da Nova, entre 1995 e 2020. Chama ao palco Carlos Fiolhais. Licenciou-se em Física na Universidade de Coimbra e doutorou-se em Física Teórica na Universidade Goethe, em Frankfurt. É professor catedrático aposentado da Universidade de Coimbra, foi professor convidado em universidades do Brasil e dos Estados Unidos da América. Foi fundador e diretor do Centro de Física Computacional da Universidade de Coimbra, onde instalou o maior computador português para cálculo científico, o Centopeia. Agradeço a todos a presença nesta sessão de abertura do Encontro Ciência 2022. Convido-vos a assistir ao longo do dia às diversas sessões temáticas, às demonstrações e à exposição de pósteres científicos. Regressamos no fim do dia com a segunda sessão plenária dedicada ao clima. Até breve.